Welcome back, gang. It's Deltia from DeltiasGaming.com, and Mike here with me from ZOS. Mike, say hello.
Hey, how are you?
Thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it, Jessica, coordinating this. And Mike, you're part of the new PvE trial team, is that right?
Yeah, I'm actually in charge of the entire dungeon team. We handle trials, arenas, and dungeons,
So Dragonstar Arena, the Maelstrom Arena, we said, and this new trial. So,
as well as all the original trials and all the original dungeons too.
oh, really? Yeah, all the new dungeons. Okay, cool. Well, thanks a lot for joining us, and we wanted to ask you a few questions. I have about 10 questions here about the new trial, and let's get right into it, shall we?
Sure.
Okay. So when you first got together about the trial, what was that meeting process looking like, or how did you even talk about what you're going to do with the new trial?
So I would like to say that we had this grand, awesome scheme. We put it together, and it was this pitch that we put before the higher ups, and they were like, "This is glorious." But actually, what it is it's a bunch of designers sitting in a room, and we kind of spitball. We actually, I think, went with 6 or 7 different pitches to find out. Kind of like, well, then we can go with this way. We had unique mechanics for most of these and stuff, and this is the kind of the one where we said, you know what, we can really explore this. So that's kind of the general how most of these go. Is we start with several different pitches, and then it gets boiled down as we get, as we say, okay, well, this is going to work better, and this is going to work better.
So it's just a meeting of people in rooms just tossing out ideas, and then you kind of go with different directions.
It's very collaborative. We use a lot of whiteboards, so we write everything on the whiteboard,
Oh, yeah.
and then crossing stuff out and saying, no, that's not going to work. And then it's really good to do that as designers collaboratively, because we can put ideas on the board, and then whoever has the idea says, well, this is what I was thinking, and then somebody else can jump in and say, you know what, that's a really good idea, and then we could do this. So that's kind of how it kind of comes about, and then the entire pitch gets put together with pretty much collaborative effort from all the designers.
Okay, cool. So that brings me up to another point. The trials have seemed to gotten better, in my opinion. They're a little bit longer when you look at Serpent, Sanctum Ophidia comparatively to AA. Now, have you been implementing anything that you've played in previous games or different MMOs or even elements in Elder Scrolls Online early development into this trial specifically?
So what we usually grab inspiration. It is the common question to ask about MMOs and other stuff, but a lot of times what we'll grab is inspiration from any games we play. Third-person action games, first-person shooters, sports, particularly with like reward mechanisms and stuff like that. And by reward mechanisms, I don't necessarily mean items. I mean how a player feels from receiving feedback from certain things and stuff like that. So we actually look at a broader scope of games that we think, and we don't necessarily play games the way I don't play games the way I used to. It's fortunate side effect of being a designer that I'll play a game, and then if something goes well or something happens, and I go, oh, let me I break it down in my mind. I'm like, what was the design elements of that and stuff like that. So yes, we definitely take a look at, good or bad, the previous iterations that we've had in our game. Hellra, AA, Sanctum, all those things played a big part in it. Not to mention, Maelstrom also played a big part in how the trial plays out too.
Okay. Well, that kind of brings me to the next question. It's very lore, very Khajiit 2 Moonish. If you've ever been to Reaper's Mark, it feels like you're walking through, Khajiit Central in there. Now, there's ogres and that sort of thing. What are their tie-in in terms of lore comparatively to all the other Khajiit / Reaper's Mark mobs that we see?
So the ogres are an interesting, more of a designy thing than a lore thing. So whenever we go into these, it's generally not as fun to fight the same what we call dynamics, which are the typical humanoids. Humanoids like dynamics usually have the biggest animation package, so we can do the most things with those. So what we like to do is throw in a bigger, beefier monster that you're going to. So when we wanted to do that here, we had to take a look. We had already done trolls and Sanctum Ophidia. We wanted to take a look at what monsters we could use here, and we got the idea as our world builders were working with the mountainous areas that, oh, well, these caves, these could definitely house ogres, ogre tribes that would be living up here. And then as the Dramathra kind of broke the seal and invaded this land, they kind of are driven out of their homes to come down and investigate and stuff. So it was much more of a design going to lore and saying, we want to do this, can we? And then lore giving us the go ahead to say,
Lawrence.
yeah, it takes a lot. Yeah, Lawrence.
Same name.
Win is another one of our writers. So yeah, we kind of go to them, and we have a ZOS lore like channel that we can go to and ask the question out, and anybody with the lore knowledge will be able to kick in and say, yeah, this will make sense, or that's not going to fly. So that's where that came from.
Cool. Well, I love the art of the dungeon. It feels very Khajiit-ish. I don't know how to say that, but yeah, it's just like Reaper's Mark. And another question is, as terms of like the duration of the dungeon, it seems like this dungeon is like larkens back to old school MMOs where it's kind of a longer dungeon. The boss fights are beefier. I think as the trial team progresses, is that your goal? Because I know AA got a lot of really fast times, and then Serpent cut it down, and now it looks like this trial, I mean, that's going to affect a lot of the endgame builds and the metas, because you can't just 1 minute blow all your magic and destroy everything. You have to have some sustained.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What it is if you think about Hellra and AA, those two came out relatively close to after we launched. So we launched the game, and then we released Hellra and AA, and they come out, and they were probably not as long as we had originally wanted. And I think that over the course of since that came out to where we are now, we have a really good grasp on what players are able to do and how effective players are in the content. So we have really, really good target numbers for where we think players' damage per second is going to be, what tanks can handle, how much healing they can do. So then you see that reflected definitely in this trial, in that you go into these boss fights, and it's not a minute, it's not 40 seconds. It's going to be, and that's definitely what we wanted. We wanted these boss fights to be a very big focal point for these trials. And I think that also another great aspect of this was the scaling of the bosses as you went through. So boss 1 has some mechanics that you got to learn, and it takes X amount of minutes. Boss 2 is a little bit more to learn. It's really nation heavy, and it's a little bit longer. And then boss 3 is the longest fight I think we've ever done in the game. So
there's some long fights.
Yeah. So yeah, that's we're definitely learning what players can handle and how far we can push them. Definitely inform that. So yeah, going forward, we don't want. I don't think anybody really wants a 30-second boss fight. So
no.
We would definitely push towards that higher end engaging combat that takes a while.
Yeah, and it seems like it's forming 3 different metas. You know, you have like the dungeon meta, which is maybe just doing dailies. You have the Maelstrom meta, which is more solo play, self-healing. And then now you're going to have the longer duration fight trial meta, which is definitely creating a lot of interesting content PvE-wise. Now, I hope you upgrade Dragonstar Arena to VR16. I know you've commented on it before. That's just a personal thing. But yeah, I really want that, and thank you for making Save Progress in Maelstrom Arena. I think that's hinders a lot of people from even trying it, because they've heard the horror stories of, staying in there 8 hours a day. And have you guys heard a lot of feedback on that?
We've gotten a little bit, because it's only really been on PTS, and we've had some people that have gone and tried it, but we're very anxious because this is an ongoing process with thing, and Thieves Guild isn't even out yet, so I'm really anxious to see the feedback that we get once it actually hits the live servers and we see more and more players able to do it. But so far, people have said that it's great, and it's one of those things that, along with removing the Soul Reservoir in trials and making them the Vitality bonus, I think is really going to be a boon for both Maelstrom Arena and the trials in general. Is more people. That's the goal, is to get more and more people to try these out and to play these without the weird artificial kind of blocks that we have.
Now, Vitality bonus, could you just explain that briefly?
Sure. Vitality, previously in trials and even the arena, we had what was called the Soul Reservoir, and the Soul Reservoir was a limiting factor. You had X amount of lives that you could do that you had, and if you died and depleted those, then nobody could resurrect within the instance, the trial, the arena. So what we did was we took a look at that and said, that's just not ideal. It creates this barrier that if you're not able to get past the boss, you then have to start all over again after X amount of time, and it's really almost like an arbitrary number that we came up with that we thought would be good. So what we did with the vitality bonus is we ripped out that system, the limiting factors, and we tied it into the leaderboard. So you have a set number of lives, but they don't stop you from resurrecting. All they do is if you have any of those lives left, they're multiplied by 1,000 and added to your leaderboard score. So it's not a limiting factor in any way. It's more of a bonus. So the really, really good guilds and groups that are gonna go for the high leaderboard scores are definitely gonna say, okay, well, let's try to do this with no deaths or the minimal deaths to get that vitality bonus.
Okay. And following up to the guild and making this content a lot more accessible. Now you guys have added it to the group finder, is that right?
Not the trial.
Not the trial, but you can. We tried it. I was on an Ebonheart pack character. My friend was on DC, and we grouped up when we were allowed to go in there together.
That is going to be in for Thieves Guild, yes.
Okay.
100%. We will have cross-faction trials.
So, personal feedback. Why did you think that was important to add group cross-faction? I know you've probably heard a lot about it, but was it something you really wanted to get out for this patch?
Definitely. We were hoping to, so there's a lot of things that when you go into development for this kind of thing is you go, this is kind of what we want. And eventually when you get to a point you go, okay, we got to take a hard look at this schedule and we have to pull stuff off and say, we just don't have the tech time. We just don't have this time. We don't have whatever time and pull some of these features off or pull them to another DLC. And we really wanted cross-faction because we were going to have it for groups anyways. And we just had, and when we talked to the engineers about it, they said we could definitely do that. There might be some wonkiness with some of this stuff, so we have to hammer it out. So until we actually get the go ahead to say, oh yes, we're definitely going to do this, we can't really promise it. So it was always definitely like this. There was this chance that we were like, oh, we're probably going to be able to do this. We're probably going to be able to do this. And finally, towards the end, we got enough testing, we got everything pushed through that we were actually able to do it. So yeah, we've heard the stories. We talked about it before. Have we heard the feedback? We've heard tons of feedback of, some guy started playing the game a year and a half ago when we launched, and he started DC, and then 3 weeks ago he convinced his friend to play, and his friend just happened to start Ebonheart Pack or something, and it's like, oh well, now we can't play together or something like that, and now this should alleviate any of that, or at least some of those issues that might come up where it's like, I have friends over here, or I have 8 friends on this faction, and we want a bigger pool of people to pull from. So,
and that was my problem with starting trials early on. It just wasn't very accessible, in my opinion, and I think accessibility is a big part of why this game's getting better, and that's going to be big. So, with that being said, taking in fan base, feedback. Have you done anything directly due to the Council of Raider feedback, or specifically things on the forums that have been mentioned?
We actually get feedback from everywhere. I mean, it's really one of those things that's like, we scour forums, we look at streams, we go to guild meetings where where the various guilds are going to get together and talk about stuff. So I don't know that we could point to anything specific as much as just the holistic view of all of the feedback we get. We hear it all, and it does directly affect maybe not even some of this content we have now, but future content, stuff that you're talking about, like normal mode for trials. We've heard tons of people say, I want to do the trial, but it's so hardcore, and then you get yelled at because you can't do it, and all that stuff. That kind of feedback directly relates to a normal mode, where we say, hey, you know what? Let's scale this back a little bit. Let's get more people in there so they can experience this kind of content and have a lot of fun in here without the pressure of, I have to be in an Uber guild and I have to push max DPS and I have to do all that stuff. So yeah, I would say in those regards, definitely. Also, we heard the feedback that, they want it to be harder. They don't want 11-minute trials or 15-minute trials or something like that. So again, that also informed a lot of those designs that we had to say, you know what, let's push this. Let's see what we can do with Maw.
So what would be the number one most thing that you get the most often?
Right now, probably looking for trial.
Looking for group?
Yeah, looking for group. Probably looking for group trials right now is probably one of the biggest ones that we get asked about. And I think if you look at that, it's just an easier way to group is really what everybody
Right.
everybody wants, and it's something we really want to do. I would love to have just a system where somebody can get in the game and then just click their little window and say, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna queue up for a trial, and then go about their business. And then when the trial pops and you get the appropriate people, and then you all jump in there and you have fun with it. So it's definitely something we want to do, and that's probably the most requested feature right now.
Okay. Well, it's gotten a lot better with the grouping, outside, and especially cross faction. So I think that's great.
Yeah.
Now the trial is scalable this time, right? So you can go in at as level 15 and see the content if you wanted to. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Why did you guys do that?
That goes back to the pretty much just player engagement. I don't anticipate that there's going to be a tremendous amount of level 30s that are like, let's get a 12 guys together and run the trial. But the fact that it is there, and the fact that there is that opportunity to be there is good, and it was really minimal more work for us to do it that way than to not do it. So it's one of those things that's like, yeah, we'll add it because we have the ability to do that. Scaling tech has been in the game for a while, and we have the ability to do it for this trial. And if a bunch of level 40s want to get together or whatever and run the trial, then they are more than welcome to, and they can do it. So the scalar thing is really just to get as many players as possible to be able to play this content.
Accessibility. Okay, cool. Now, when you go about testing it internally, how do you go about testing? Like, let's say you have a 12 group trial. Do you have 3 stam DPS, and they're going to be, one's a Dragon Knight, one's a Nightblade? I mean, how do you go about that specifically?
So there's a lot. We actually have various stages of pardon me. We have various stages of QA that are involved. And typically, when we're in development, we have our embedded QA people, which are this is a QA a small group of QA that are just for our team. So as we develop stuff and we push it to them, and they're able to test it really quickly to find all the bugs and stuff like that. And then once we go to a larger aspect where we have balance testing, and balance testing is the big aspect that we 12 players, and we have multiple groups that will run through different things, and we actually, and it's weeks that these people are in there every night or every day.
Really?
Yeah, that they're in there testing this stuff, and we're in there as well, and we're writing notes, and we're saying, okay, let's come back tomorrow, and then when we get happy with something, then we'll say, okay, now you guys need to switch up your group, and we even do some more like esoteric stuff where we start talking about like, let's see what it looks like with all pet sorts, or let's see what it looks like with 12 DK standards dropping on the ground, and make sure everybody doesn't crash out and stuff like that. So yeah, we go through a lot of iterations on testing to make sure, and all of the people that we pull in a lot of people from different parts of the company. Some of our QA for our gameplay team, which they're really, really big on class balance, and they're really big on knowing the ins and outs of all the classes. We pull them in, and they'll. I think our tanks in particular tested with like 3 or 4 different builds of tanks, one of every single class, tanking to make sure that if you go in here with a particular tank, it's like, well, this guy gets really messed up or something like that. So we tested it with the absence of some classes, the overprevalence of other classes. So stuff like, like I think we had some testing blocks where we had no Dragon Knights to see what that felt like and stuff like that. So,
okay, cool.
Yeah, we go through a lot. It's a lot of testing for that, especially like a trial because it's so big.
Now, what did you learn from this particular trial that you plan to implement in future content, whether it be small group or large group like another trial?
So that's the funny thing is that the trial hasn't even gone live yet. So we're actually still watching and waiting, and we've learned some things from PTS, which is great, and we're really anxious for it to go live because that gives us a wealth of new information. We have all of our logging in place. We're going to be able to see all of that kind of stuff. So that's great. We think that one of the biggest boons for this is going to be the normal mode. I saw streams and stuff of people running normal modes that maybe perhaps didn't run trials before or something like that, and that's a huge thing for us. For us to be able to see, just actively see players going out there and saying, you know what, I want to run the trial and I want to do this, and so that's huge for us. We really like the way that the boss fights escalate, where you have the starter boss and then or the first boss, and then as you progress through, the bosses get more and more tough, either more mechanically heavy or more health that you have to burn through and stuff. So progressive, more difficulty.
Okay, cool.
And we're definitely still evaluating a lot of these elements in it. So
it'll be interesting to see how many more people jump into trials. I think it's a lot more accessible. Now, I gotta throw you a sidewinder here.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
So there was a leaked picture on the internet of some new monster helms. Now, they look like the normal versions of the helms. So, like, Direfrost Keep doesn't have a veteran mode yet. Any little clues little hints on that?
No, unfortunately, I don't.
Oh, man.
Sorry.
I figured I would try.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Well, Mike, hey, I really appreciate you joining and taking the time out to talk about the new trial. I've enjoyed it. I'm not going to bash my head against the vet mode on PTS too much, but I'm ready to do it on live.
All right, man.
So thanks so much.